www.asfalt.org.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Guilty until proven innocent. How the War on Terror trained police to violate our constitutional rights for profit. We were discussing earlier the stories of real-life Americans who have faced the highway robbery that is asset forfeiture. Tell you another little story. 2 poker players are driving their rental car through Iowa on their way to Las Vegas. They're pulled over by a state trooper who tells them they failed to signal when passing another car. The trooper gives them a warning for failure to signal, but continues asking them if they have drugs or, quote, large amounts of U.S. currency, end quote, in the car. Despite the drivers refusing all searches and asking to leave, a drug dog is brought to the rental car. The canine alerts, the car is searched, and the police find $100,000 in cash, shrink-wrapped in plastic, and an herb grinder with marijuana residue in it. After a trip to the station and more questioning, 2 hours later, the poker players are released with a citation for misdemeanor paraphernalia possession, a $65 fine. The cops kept the $100,000 thanks to that legal theft known as asset forfeiture. That is the most expensive marijuana crumbs in history. $100,000. It's a series of reports from the Washington Post. They all came out this year back in September. Highly recommend you check them out. They detailed how asset forfeiture has become quite literally highway robbery. And basically asset forfeiture is when the cops steal your cash, your car, your home, or other valuables under the pretense that it was ill-gotten proceeds of criminal activity. This idea was pushed by then-Senator Joe Biden back in the late 1980s, and the whole idea was to seize the sports cars and the yachts and the cash from the Miami Vice cocaine kingpins and use that money to fund the police as they tried to catch them. And the idea, as a lot of governmental ideas can be, is a good idea, but it's one that comes with a really big unintended consequence, and that's this policing for profit. No longer was the idea to go after the cocaine kingpin. That guy, he can afford an army of lawyers to defend him in court. But if you go after the small-time drug user, small-time drug dealer, or even just the innocent citizen who has enough money worth taking but not enough money to fight to get it back, that's where the profit lies. And it does take some money to fight back because your property has no constitutional rights and is considered guilty until proven innocent. In fact, you don't even need to be charged with a crime, and most of these people, like the stories we told, weren't charged with crimes in order for the cops to steal your stuff on the basis that it's criminal stuff. But asset forfeiture really accelerated following the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks. There used to be this California cop. His name was Joe David, and he had quite a talent for finding contraband in vehicles during roadside stops. His talent became so legendary, he gained the nickname Canine. And the claim was that he could smell cocaine. He was able to smell it himself. Didn't need a drug dog. One of his early successes involved finding some 40 pounds of cocaine that had been hidden under some guy's car seat. When he brought in a friend, or when he asked a friend if he noticed anything weird, his friend happened to be an auto detail upholstery guy and said, yeah, there's something weird about the stitching there. And that was one of his first big successes. The word of this guy spread, and he began training his fellow cops on some of his techniques, and that spread. And soon it grew to him forming a company called Desert Snow. This was formed back in 1989. The whole purpose of the company is to train other cops on how he does stop and seizure techniques. And all throughout the 1990s, Desert Snow was teaching cops how to push the constitutional limits of questioning suspects, of detaining them, and how to search their vehicles. So by 2003, after September 11 and everyone's all caught up in fighting terrorism, he was called to Congress for a demonstration on how to investigate potential weapons and explosive smuggling in vehicles by terrorists. And that began a flow of millions of dollars in federal contracts and grants for Desert Snow, which was now rebranded as a counterterrorism program to expand its training nationwide. The idea being one of the big ways that we can hurt the terrorists is by seizing the money they use to operate. Part of Desert Snow's services for law enforcement included a private social internet network, kind of a Facebook, if you will, or bulletin board or a Reddit or something like that. You have to pick the right metaphor, I suppose, but a private network for cops that was called, and is still called, Black Asphalt. The service was sold to law enforcement as a way that they could connect the dots and share information between agencies to prevent the next terrorist attack. There are over 25,000 cops nationwide online on this Black Asphalt system, this bulletin board, sharing tips with each other on how to seize money from roadside stops. And most chillingly, these cops would trade hunches about drivers who hadn't committed any violations or crimes, just sharing these drivers' personal data, what car they're driving, where they're headed. For example, if they'd pull over a lady in California and she seems nervous and has a bunch of garbage on the floor of her car, but that cop never came up with enough probable cause to initiate a search, he would get on that Black Asphalt, post a description of what she looks like, what car she's in, what's the license number of the car, which highway she's headed out on in which direction, to alert the cop in Nevada, to whatever cops are in Nevada, to watch for this girl, pull her over, and maybe see if they can get a probable cause to search. That's how this thing basically worked. In fact, it was a tip from Black Asphalt from an Illinois cop that alerted the Iowa trooper to follow those two poker players a few miles before making the stop that made him $100,000. Now, according to the Washington Post, police nationwide have seized $2.5 billion in cash from almost 62,000 people without warrants, without indictments, under the federal civil asset forfeiture laws since 2001. And cops trained by Desert Snow and the cops that are online with Black Asphalt seized over $427 million in just 5 years. Now, if Black Asphalt and Desert Snow weren't bad enough, I mean, Desert Snow sounds like some sort of cocaine operation, and Black Asphalt sounds like a program to pull over black guys for driving. The next one will blow your mind. It's a group of ex-military that have formed one of these training groups. They call themselves the 420 Group. That's right, they appropriated 420 in the name of their group, which is dedicated to drug seizures to make money, to seize cash. The 420 Group. Well, fortunately, you'd think, we now have 4 states that have legalized marijuana, so that should alleviate some of the asset forfeitures, right? Unfortunately, no. This is a federal program we're talking about. This federal program is known as equitable sharing. And it means that local cops in legal states can simply transfer their case to the federal court where marijuana is still illegal. That's right. Marijuana can be a perfectly legal, taxed, and regulated item in Portland, Oregon that a cop cannot arrest you for, cannot shake you down for. But if you happen to have $10,000 cash on you, he can take that, even though marijuana is perfectly legal, by putting it into the federal equitable sharing program. Now, in federal court, The feds then take their share. They figure out whatever their costs are, right? They take their share. And then whatever's left, 80% of that, up to 80% of that, can go right back to those local cops. So the local cops basically are, in a sense, laundering money that you wouldn't be able to seize it under Oregon state law, but you can launder it into the federal system and bring it back to the local cops, or at least 80% of it, or close to 80%. Now, the American Civil Liberties Union and the Institute for Justice have been tackling the legal nightmare that we just described. In another story, there was a man in California, an Iranian immigrant who became an American citizen, who worked hard and eventually got to the point where he owned an office building worth $1.5 million. And he just about lost that $1.5 million office building because one of his tenants was a legal dispensary that sold $37 worth of medical marijuana to a cop who had gotten a legal recommendation, an actual recommendation from a doctor for the medical use of cannabis. Because of that $37 sale, he almost lost his $1.5 million office building through asset forfeiture. And as for the poker players, well, those guys fought the seizure. They found, their lawyers found police dash cam video that proved they had properly signaled on the freeway. There was no reason they had not committed an improper lane change. They had properly signaled. So they cut a deal with the cops to get back 90% of their money. 90%. So in other words, the cops stole $10,000 with absolutely no probable cause for a traffic stop based on the hunch of an out-of-state cop posting on an online bulletin board for police treasure hunting. Wow. Does that not just blow your mind? And now these two guys have hired a new lawyer to pursue civil rights charges. And this is where it gets interesting. By pursuing this as a civil rights issue, might be able to get some nationwide action on this. The charges are against Desert Snow and Black Asphalt for training and incentivizing police officers to violate Americans' Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. It's an amazing, incredible story. Again, it's on the Washington Post. If you go to their website and search for civil asset forfeiture, I'm sure you'll find these stories. They're pretty long, but very, very well written, very well researched. Hey, folks, that's all the time we got, but we got Chuck Diesel in the studio. We're going to have some fun for our Friday. Stick around. Hour 2 is next. For everyone here at 420radio.org, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll